what we've got.
I think I had the spotlight on myself, Ange, which is not like me. I've turned it off now.
Okay. All right, guys. Well, we might just sort of start. We're just going to need a couple of minutes for Paul to be able to join us. So we'll just go through a few things to start off. Just to introduce myself, my name's Angela Carter. I'm the Disability Policy Officer for HACSU. Previously was an organiser for about 11 years and then a disability worker for about 25 before that. So as much as you'd think that I look like I'm only 21, I'm actually about 78. But a lot of you will know me, but for those who don't, that's who I know a little bit about stuff. So thanks for joining us today. I just want to start off by thanking you and recognising the level of exhaustion that disability workers are at the moment. We know how tired you are and how the pandemic has impacted on your particularly your work life, but also your work-life balance at home from the additional hours that you're having to work so much and the strain that you have from having all your clients remaining at home during the day, and for those working in other areas, the impact of them not being able to do the things they normally can. So from us, we say thank you, and we hope that you can keep going and we get through this soon. Look, to enable management of the meeting, you will be on mute. We're going to ask that you put any questions into the chat function. So your chat button on Zoom is normally at the bottom. And if you can direct those chats to James McWhinney, James will then move to those towards the end of the meeting. I do want to have to say that we're going to start with some ground rules as well. We had a meeting the other day that became a bit disrespectful and became a bit heated. So we do have some ground rules. We do expect that people remain respectful at all times. And if there's not, we will remove people from the meeting. We won't be apologising for that. Let's start by, of course, acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and sea on which we're meeting today. For me, that's the Gulajang clan. We pay our respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and any of those peoples with us today. And as unionists, we pledge our ongoing solidarity with the traditional owners and all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples in their struggle for recognition of sovereignty, historical truth and justice. And this land was stolen and never ceded. So we've called this meeting today to really talk to you about the health orders that have been made in relation to vaccination. Well, the health order actually hasn't been made yet, but the announcement of the health order, and thought that we needed to be able to meet with you to be able to talk you through this and hear any questions that you have. Now, Paul will address you in the first instance to go through that. I will then run through some of what it is and what it comprises and what the impacts of that are. And our Senior Industrial Officer, Elisa Dickinson, will talk to you about the legalities of the orders. So hopefully we'll answer all of those questions for you along the way. And by the time you get to the end, you may not have too many questions. But of course, we'll open up to questions following all of that information being given to you. Now, I'm just going to check, do we have Paul with us yet?
Yes, I'm here, Ange.
Oh, fabulous. Thanks, Paul. I'll pass over. So Paul Healy, our State Secretary.
Thank you, everyone, and thanks for being here tonight. Look, I just want to reiterate what Anne said. We really appreciate all the hard work you've done, the leadership you've shown, the care you've provided to the clients and support to their families has been huge. The information you've provided throughout this pandemic that we've been able to feed back to government, affect policy, make changes has been amazing. And there was a real risk last year that disability was going to get really out of control, and there was going to be a huge amount of illness and death. Through your hard work and diligence, that's been mostly averted. It's been amazing work you've done. So I want to thank you all for that. And I want to thank you for being the members and sticking with us all through this tough times as the union continues to grow and develop. We've spoken to many people about the issues of vaccination, whether it should be mandatory or not. And we've listened to people. We respect all people's opinions. Everybody's entitled to have their opinion, and everybody has their view. We've taken the stance, and I was vaccine hesitant at the early stages, and with a bit of encouragement I got there. And now I understand that it's the best way to keep my family safe, keep my colleagues safe, and if we come in contact with you guys in your workplace, to keep the people you're caring for safe. So from that point of view, I chose to get the vaccine, and I'm glad now that I'll be freed up going forward to do things. And we respect people's decisions and their choices. But in this case, the choice is not in our hands. It's not in the government's hands. It's come from the Chief Health Officer under the emergency powers. And they've made the decision that everybody who works, authorised worker, needs to be vaccinated. And so that's caused a lot of distress, and we recognise that distress, and we understand that. But in the end of the day, people are left with two clear choices. The choice is you get vaccinated and continue to work and do the great job you do, or you won't be in the industry any further. And that's not the union. Every union's looked at and explored all these issues, and there's no way around the Chief Health Officer's orders. We as the union is here to provide industrial support and camaraderie support to our members. And with that industrial support, we'll help you all the way through whatever decisions you make. We will not be running any court cases, and Alicia will go wide. We won't be running court cases or anything like that. But we will support you through your industrial rights, and we'll support you to make sure you're safe in the workplace, and we continue to provide the best outcomes and care for the participants that you look after. So let's have a good discussion tonight. Let's have a talk and keep working our way through it. And we are always here to support the members, and always will be. So thank you for your time tonight, and thanks for being here. And I'll hand back to Ange.
Thanks, Paul. So I think what we'll do now, we'll go through what it is. Okay, so currently at the moment, there hasn't been a health order actually issued. The announcement was made by the Premier last Friday, but the health order we're still waiting for that. We've been hoping every day that it would come, but I checked just before and it's still not there. But I think we've got to be very cautious that we shouldn't consider that it's not going to come. So don't sit back and think, well, I'm not going to act on this until we get one, because it will come. So, and what it will contain from the announcement is that for all authorised workers, which covers all disability workers, that you must have your first dose by October the 15th. We do think there is a window for you to be booked in until the 22nd of October, but that hasn't been confirmed yet. And you will need to be fully vaccinated by the 26th of November. It's a very short time frame, we know, and it's certainly not a time frame that we are happy with. And in all of our discussions with people, we have always said that you need to have a decent lead in time to an order like this in disability services to enable people to actually be able to get the access to vaccination. So we've had no control over that, and that we know that that's going to be a problem for people. But we do ask that you get out there and try to get vaccinations in order to reach those deadlines. We also know, of course, that the authorised workers covers a huge amount of people. So if your choice at the end of the day is not to be vaccinated, and as Paul said, you will not be able to continue in the industry, you're also limiting any work that you can do, because so many industries now will be covered by what the order, once it is updated, which we expect to be order number 6. There are exemptions for medical contraindications that are not subject to the order. They're very specific exemptions that the TGA has provided, and they are contained in the order. And if you want more information about what they are, they're pretty wide and easily able to find, and the current orders have got those things in them. But they go to very specific illnesses and conditions for each vaccine that you might have that might give you an exemption. So they're also reviewed every 6 months. So those exceptions are only for 6 months and reviewed. We're trying to get some clarity on staff who have been COVID positive, and so staff who are COVID positive can't get vaccinated for 6 months at the moment. So we're trying to get some clarity on how they will be treated under the order. Our expectation is that they will be treated as being vaccinated, and then but be required to be vaccinated when they can be, because they already have those antibodies. But we're not clear on that yet, and we're still seeking that information. What happens if you don't meet that deadline of the 15th of October? You won't be allowed to enter the worksite. So there is, and that's why it's important that you make bookings now if you're not already vaccinated, because you will not be able to go to work and you will not be stood down or with pay to do that. So if you can't continue to work, you'll have to use your own leave until you go through the process with the employer about what that means for you. So we expect that for those who can't be vaccinated or have not been vaccinated by the 15th, that the employer will need to meet with you and discuss your reasons for not being vaccinated. And then we would expect that they would then work through those barriers with you. So if there's a good reason why you can't be vaccinated, they should work with you to try and help get that through that barrier. And a good example of that, I just spoke to someone earlier who said she's pregnant and she's due in 1 month. And even though the vaccine is safe for people in pregnancy, she's wanting to wait till after she gives birth to get her vaccination. But she's talked to the employer about that, and of course she's going to start her leave early so that she's not required to. But of course, when she returns to work, she will be required to be vaccinated. So there might be different reasons why you're not, and there might be barriers that are there. So we expect you to have those conversations with the employer for them to try to work with you on. However, at the end of the day, at some point, if you have making the choice not to be vaccinated and you're not covered by a medical exemption, or there is no other reason for you not to be vaccinated, in disability services, at the end of the day, you will be terminated and you won't be able to continue to work. There are no jobs in disability service that are considered to be reasonable for you to not be covered by the order. So I guess a lot of people are vaccine hesitant. We know that there's a lot of people out there that are still hesitant. And so I will talk a little bit about the safety. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because I'm not a medical expert, but we will talk to you about what the information that we have had and the common questions that we get. So in terms of them being through all of the testing of vaccinations, the vaccines have all been through all of the testing that any vaccination has had, and no phases were skipped. So the mRNA has been used for years. It's just the building blocks that they've built on from when they've been using it with Ebola. And one of the reasons that they've been so fast is because there's been over 100 of them in development at once. There's been tons of money thrown at these vaccines instead of the single grants that one company will be working on a vaccine. They hold the information to themselves at every phase of the trials and the next phase that they have to go through. They've got to wait to get more funding. That hasn't been the case for COVID. The whole world has come together to try to get vaccines here. So they've shared the information. All the money in the world's been thrown at it. There's been huge numbers in the trials, far more than any other vaccine trials. But importantly, they've not skipped any of the approval processes. The vaccines are halal and they are supported by the Australian Fatwa Council and the Catholic Church. And it doesn't alter your DNA or cause infertility. In terms of infertility, it's actually having COVID that is far more likely to cause you issues with fertility. It's also been found to be safe in pregnancy, and you've got to remember that these vaccines have been used overseas for a long time now and have had huge numbers of people vaccinated for them to monitor the safety of these vaccines. But if you have any concerns about safety of vaccines, please speak to medical professionals. So speak to your GP, speak to someone else, attend a webinar. There are quite a few of them on at the moment. Watch a recorded webinar and get that information yourself. Don't listen to me. You don't listen to social media, and certainly don't get it from the web. Talk to medical experts if you've got concerns. And I have to say that we've had lots of experience of people who have been worried about that, and they have gone to one of these webinars. Paul's one of them. And we've got quite a few members that have told us that they came along to a webinar and it did change their mind and made them feel more confident about getting the vaccination. But of course, you've got a time crunch now. You don't have that time to wait. Is it discriminatory? No, it's not. So the Equal Opportunity Commission has already put out statements to say that not being vaccinated or not being vaccinated is not one of the protected attributes under the Equal Opportunity Act. And the matter of whether it's lawful, I think that's one of the other things that people talk about a lot. And I'm going to throw to Elisa Dickinson, our Senior Industrial Officer, to talk to the legalities of vaccination for you. Thanks, Elisa.
Thanks, Sanj, and thanks everyone for joining us tonight. It's good to see you all. So yeah, I'm just going to go through, I guess, the legal position on this in a little more detail, because I know a lot of people have questions about this. So the way that it works is that under Section 200 of the Public Health and Wellbeing Act, the Victorian state government are given special and very wide-reaching powers to make public health orders where it's considered reasonably necessary to protect public health. So these are powers that the Commonwealth Government do not have under the Constitution, and they are powers that rest with the state. And what that means is that it is lawful for the Victorian Government to make public health orders where it's necessary to protect public health. So because the Victorian Government can lawfully make a public health order mandating the vaccine, it means that it's a lawful and reasonable direction for your employer to direct you to get the vaccine and to provide your vaccination status. And if you do refuse to comply with this direction, it is lawful for your employer to terminate your employment, and that's after the timelines for getting the vaccine have come to an end. As you know from the public health order, there are timelines that have been put in there. So because it's lawful for your employer to terminate you in these circumstances, it's most likely that you will not have any unfair dismissal rights because it's a lawful and reasonable direction. And the Fair Work Commission have also found similarly, which I'll come to in a second. The only exception to that is that if you have been terminated where perhaps you come under an exception to the order. So there are some circumstances where exceptions to the rule applies, like anything. And for example, if you have a medical contraindication that's named in the public health order, you may fall into an exception, which means you don't need to get the vaccine or provide evidence of that to your employer. But you should definitely consult your union, HACSU, about that if you think you fall in one of those categories before refusing. There's also a lot of questions that are coming up about decisions that are coming out of the Fair Work Commission, and there's been a couple of recent decisions. And one of those decisions is the Good Start Learning case. A few of you might be familiar with it. It has to do with a childcare centre. They introduced a flu vaccination policy. The employee was obviously asked to get the flu vaccination, working in a childcare centre. That person refused to get the flu vaccination, and ultimately they were dismissed as a result of that. And that case, it was lodged as an unfair dismissal, and it went before Deputy President Lake at the Fair Work Commission. And Deputy President Lake concluded that the direction to get the flu shot had to be a lawful and reasonable direction, and it was decided that it was a lawful and reasonable direction in this particular instance. But I think the case that's probably generated a lot more interest and definitely a lot more media attention is the highly publicised decision of Kinder and Sapphire Coast Community Aged Care. It was originally a decision of Commissioner McKinnon, which was then appealed to the full bench of the Fair Work Commission. And in this case, Sapphire Coast Community Aged Care, they introduced a mandatory policy for all staff to get the flu shot, so similar to Good Start Learning case, claiming it was an inherent requirement of the role to be vaccinated and to have the flu shot. And Jennifer Kimber, she was a receptionist at Sapphire Coast Community Aged Care, and she did not get vaccinated, did not want to get vaccinated. And ultimately that resulted in the termination of her employment. So similar to Good Start Learning case, she lodged an unfair dismissal, saying that she was unfairly dismissed as a result of refusing to get the flu shot. And what happened in the first instance, Commissioner McKinnon from the Fair Work Commission, she decided the dismissal of the employee was fair, because the vaccine, she decided that the vaccine was an inherent requirement of the role, of Jennifer Kimber's role. And the reason she decided it was an inherent requirement of the role was because at the time there was a New South Wales public health order in place. And that order required all people who entered an aged care facility to have the flu shot. Anyone who entered, they had to have the flu shot. So it was decided that in order for her to be able to perform her duties, it was an inherent requirement of the role that she have the flu shot. So Ms Kimber, she appealed that decision. She appealed it to the full bench of the Fair Work Commission, and ultimately the appeal was not allowed. The majority decision was that the appeal was not allowed, and they concluded that Commissioner McKinnon, she hadn't erred in her decision, she had made the right decision, and the dismissal was fair in the circumstances. And I think this decision has been a little bit confusing for people, and I understand exactly why that's the case. It's because the decision also has a very, very strong dissenting judgment from Deputy President Dean, who comes out quite strongly with a very strong statement saying that the Deputy President doesn't believe that it is an inherent requirement of the role, and makes some very strong comments around the vaccine. I have to be clear though, that is a dissenting judgment. It doesn't form part of the majority judgment, but they always include the dissenting judgments in a majority decision. So that's why it's included in the case. I know we've received a lot of inquiries about it. People have felt that that was part of the majority decision, but it was a minority decision. That said, it does show, I think, the different views around the vaccine, and that was the minority decision from Deputy President Dean. But certainly in that case, the majority decision was that it was an inherent requirement of the role that Ms Kimber be vaccinated, and in those circumstances her termination of employment was fair. So that's about it, Anne. Thank you.
Thanks, Elisa. So I guess some of the other key points that we want to raise for you is just a reminder that, like, one of the reasons why it's considered to be so important in disability services that you be vaccinated is because of the safety element and the vulnerable people that you work with. And we know that in the UK, over 60% of deaths have been with people with disabilities. And we know that you certainly we don't want to see that happen here. And we have seen the cases rise quite significantly already in Victoria in disability services with, I think we're pretty close to something like 90 odd cases in disability services at the moment. Now, there isn't going to be any priority access for vaccinations for authorised workers. However, you already have priority access. So if you're trying to make appointments or you're working with some of your colleagues to make appointments, make sure that you're telling them that you're a disability worker so you get that priority access. In terms of just so people know, because it keeps changing, the vaccination intervals currently, Pfizer is 3 weeks, AstraZeneca is 6 weeks, and Moderna is 4 weeks. And of course, Moderna is largely available in pharmacies, where Pfizer and AstraZeneca are available in your hubs. I have heard from a lot of people who have been trying to access vaccinations in the state hubs that they can't get in the time periods that are lined. So please remember that those pharmacies are also available to you, and GPs. And Minister Donnellan did announce today that there's going to be a number of pop-up facilities for disability in the LGAs that have got low rates. We haven't got the detail of where they are yet, but we'll continue to disseminate those as we get them. So if you're having trouble, please let us know, because what we want to know is where there are access issues, because that's something that we might be able to help you with, to get them to create some hubs if we need to. So if you're having troubles, please let us know about that. And as Paul said, look, you know, people have got different motivations for being vaccinated. My motivation is that, you know, I haven't seen children for years. Like, I've got 3 children I haven't seen for nearly 2 years. I've got 3 other children I haven't seen for a number of months. They're probably happy about that, but, you know, I actually want to be able to see them and cook a meal, strangely enough. And, you know, I'm getting sick of the only person that I can see in the world is my husband. I live in the country, so I don't see anyone else other than my husband, who's a bit mad, and the cows. And, you know, I was saying to the other people the other day, you know, the cows used to run towards me when I'd come along and talk to me. Now they run away. They're sick of me. So, you know, my motivation, you know, I want to open up. I want to be able to see the people I love, and I want to know that when I do that, that I'm keeping them safe as well, because we know that if you are vaccinated that you can still get COVID, but you are far less likely to. You are far less likely to pass it on, and you are far less likely to need hospitalisation. And that is the focus here, that we know that we can't, you know, we can't remove COVID from society any longer, but it is about making sure that our health system can actually support people and those without COVID that might need hospitalisation, but also to reduce the risks of death. From here, what we're going to, we'll keep meeting with health unions and other advocates to keep raising the issues that we become aware of. So making sure that you let us know where there are issues. We keep meeting with the Department of Health, and we'll keep lobbying around the things that create barriers for you. So in terms of, you know, leave for getting vaccinated, any access issues, the leave for recovery time, and any issues in relation to outbreaks. If you do have an outbreak in your work sites, please let us know so that we can make sure that you're well supported and that everything that's happening should happen. We'll also we've been working with providers to assist them as well, to make sure that we understand where the issues will be about workforce, and working with them about our expectations about how they treat you through this process as well. But and just as importantly, we will be representing any members that require that through the process. So, look, that's all we've got to really talk to you about. So we'll open to questions.
Thanks.
Now, thanks, James, if you can go to those.
We've got a bit of a few questions here. And just to reiterate for everyone, as I think was mentioned at the start, with the questions that go into the chat, they're only coming through to the hosts of the meeting, because we've got, I think, nearly 80 people registered to attend. So if it was going around to everyone, it would be just too difficult to manage, as we've found with other large meetings that we've been doing in recent weeks. So one of the first questions I've got here, and I think it's a matter of access you touched on earlier, but a member from regional Victoria, where there's a staff member in a house who's got their first AZ Vax appointment for the 18th of October, so that's fine, but their second is on the 29th of November, so it's outside the period. So the question is, will that staff member be unable to work between the 26th and the 29th of November?
Look, I think that's something that we're going to have to work with the provider directly about to manage that. Look, you're going to have to hope that there's some common sense here. It's possible under the order that they will be required to take leave between the 15th and the 18th, and then again on the 26th to the 29th.
Okay, so if there's a way of, through pharmacy or other way of bringing that forward, maybe the the best option.
Yeah, so that first one hopefully is, provided the order has that that booking period up until the 22nd, they should be fine. And then I don't think it'll be an issue, to be honest. I think that at the end of the day, I think there'll be common sense when it comes to a couple of days.
Okay. And got another one here. This is someone from Home at Scope saying that the Home at Scope has said they'll pay 2 hours, have 2 hour pay for. So the person's obviously submitted their certification and hasn't received the payment. Have we had feedback around that?
Yeah, so we know that Home at Scope does pay 2 hours for people to do it, because they've, they don't want people taking time off while they're actually at work. So they've agreed to pay 2 hours for people to go and do it. And I know that you submit that and you get it. So if you're not getting that, then let us know and we can try and follow that up. One of the things that's just occurred is that there's been an announcement that Victoria will be able to, providers will be able to claim $100 per vaccination per staff member in order to meet the costs associated by the provider to ensure their staff are vaccinated. So there should be no issue with people getting those payments. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a JobKeeper type thing where the money actually, the provider actually claims it, and there's no actual requirement for them to pass that on to staff. But that's the intent, is to cover the costs that they incur.
Yeah, and look, there's a bit of feedback in here of people disputing the legal advice that we've received or provided. I think the most we can say to that is, look, this is obviously Elise is our senior industrial officer, and this is the legal advice that we have, and we're providing that as to members for your information.
Yeah. And it's certainly in line with all of the advice that anyone's got from lawyers and any other union that has looked at it. So if you don't accept that advice, that's fine, and people can get their own advice, but that's the advice that we have.
Yeah. There's a question here in relation to outreach staff. So currently they're working remotely. So what time frame would be available for those staff who chose not to get vaccine? Would the commencement of consultation commence at this time of the 15th of October?
I guess there are discussions that so if there's someone in outreach that's not willing to be vaccinated, that's a discussion that they'll need to go into with their employer about whether they can continue to work. If there's an expectation that you may come into the office or that you do work with someone, you will be required to be vaccinated. So those work from home arrangements may give some people exemptions for a period of time, but as soon as you're required to either work with someone or have any contact with an office or go into a work site, those exemptions won't apply, and you'll then be subject to the order.
There's a question here about will all the participants be required to be vaccinated?
No, they're not. So there is no public health. Well, there's no way for them to make that a mandate. It of course is something that we want to occur for participants as much as possible to be vaccinated. And I think there's some hubs and inReach that's being ramped up a bit to try and increase the number of people with disabilities to be vaccinated, because in some areas of the sector, in terms of residential care, the 1A group, it's quite high. It's getting much higher, and it's higher than the general population. But in other areas, the 1B group, those people that generally live at home and have other supports that are not as, that have more things like in-home support, they're still quite low. So they won't be required to be vaccinated. And we can't obviously force that.
Now, there's a question here around, I guess, entitlements if someone is terminated. So this one might be, Elisa, if you're with us. The question is basically, if someone is terminated on the 15th of October, will they be paid their well, in this question, it's both the sick and annual leave. So what would, I guess the question, at least, would be would the entitlements be if someone is terminated on the 15th?
Yeah, your entitlements would be as normal when it comes to a termination. So if you had any accrued annual leave, you're never paid out your sick leave. That's always been the law and will continue to be the law. But in terms of any annual leave, perhaps some long service leave, any other entitlements you may be given, they would be paid out to you in your final pay. And yeah, you would receive those.
Yeah.
Thanks, Elisa.
Yeah, and sick leave's not paid out, of course.
No, and never has been.
And there's another question here about whether whether members can have access to the HACSU industrial team for one-on-one advice. Well, as Angela has already said, if any members have got queries, you can always contact us, and we will provide advice and contact through our HACSU Assist, and we'll provide the appropriate advice and support that we're able to. There's a question here. If you're on leave, or basically on personal leave or sick leave, do they have to wait until you are back before they ask for vaccination status?
Yes, thanks, James. Well, all providers will be asking for that status now. Of course, even if you are on leave, but if you're on leave and you don't respond, or you're not able, or you don't see those messages, for instance, then you would, because you're not at the work site, so the order technically will not apply to you until you return from leave. But at that point, you would be required to have already provided your vaccination status and vaccination proof if it's after the 15th of October. I know that there's been lots of questions, and I'm not sure, I might be jumping the gun, you probably got them in there, James, people saying that they want to, if they apply for leave and take leave, can they just take leave and wait this out type thing? And we know that providers are going to be very tough on this, and of course all leave requests are required to be approved, and they're approved on the basis of a number of things, including operational issues. So I think people should not assume that they can put in for leave. Like if you're already on leave and you're going into those days, then that of course won't apply. But if people think that they could just put in for leave and wait this out, then they are likely to have their leave declined. So just be cautious about that.
Now there's a query here that's quite specific to a home at scope FAQ that they've issued, but I'm not familiar with that particular one about the 0.6 of it.
I have read it today, so.
That stated that staff will not be paid if they're not vaccinated by the 15th.
So they will be required to be able to take their leave. Yeah, we wouldn't accept that people have no pay. I'm not sure that that's what it says, but you won't be put on special leave. You would be using your own leave entitlements.
There's also a couple of questions in here in relation to the liability, who bears liability if a person does experience adverse side effects or adverse reactions to a vaccination. Elisa, is that one for you, or who's going to jump on that one?
I can take that one. Look, we don't believe the public health order is going to deal with that kind of scenario. But what we are trying to do at the moment is negotiate policies. It's more in line with policy at the moment, not in enterprise agreements, although we are trying to get these terms incorporated in enterprise agreements as well. That if you have an adverse response to the vaccine, that you are given special paid leave in response to that. So that is something that we will continue to work with the various providers over the coming weeks. And I'm not sure, did you want to add anything further to that based on any?
Yeah, thanks, Lisa. Yeah, look, in terms of adverse reactions, we know that the majority of adverse reactions are minor and may only be, may only cause people any sort of harm for a couple of days. And those things, as Elisa said, we're trying to ensure that people, that stuff doesn't come out of their leave, that's covered by, vaccination leave type stuff. In terms of more significant harm that is caused, if we believe that if you got the vaccination because of the mandate that required you to be vaccinated to continue working, and that you would likely have a work cover claim that you could make, and that would cover those areas. But bearing in mind that significant reaction is incredibly rare, so I think we would look at that on a case-by-case basis as they came through.
Thanks, Ange. Thanks, Elisa. There's another question in relation to leave, and you may have answered it, and I may have been busy reading questions in the chat and missed it. But leave without pay. If someone requests leave without pay, do we know what employer policy?
Yeah, well, leave without pay is the same as any other leave entitlement. It requires approval, and it generally, depending on what agreement or award you're on, it generally requires you to have exhausted your own leave first. So it's like any other leave entitlement, though. You have to apply for it and have it approved.
Now, one's just come in. I don't know if Rasheen is getting any questions coming through to her, but I've got another one come through here. It's one I haven't seen before. Asking, is our superannuation and life insurance is still covered for death and disability if you consent to the vaccination? I don't imagine that would impact, would it?
I would assume that it covers whatever it would normally, if your superannuation or life insurance covers death, like they normally state the things that are not covered by it, that you would be covered. I think you would need to get that advice from your provider, from your insurance provider.
Yeah. Okay. Well, Rasheen, have you had any coming through to you? Because I think I've been through.
Cool.
There were a lot coming in simultaneously, so I hope I haven't missed any. I think I've certainly bundled some questions together.
If anyone's missed, if James has missed one that he's missed, then just shoot it back through again, and it'll come through the bottom for him. And I know Rasheen is putting some stuff in the chat for you about where available vaccinations are. Someone has sent me a direct message just asking me to, so I'm being open and frank that what people are sitting through, but, can I stop the sales pitch, please? That's not what we're here for. Look, it's not a sales pitch. The order is here. You're subject to it. And at the end of the day, it doesn't, people will make their own choices. So we can give you the information that we have and that we know, but at the end of the day, the choice still remains with you individually. Understanding, though, that your choice will have an impact on the consequences of your employment. And we don't want to lose any, we don't want people to lose their jobs if they're hesitant or, unwilling to be vaccinated, but that's a choice for people individually. It's not a sales pitch, it's the reality.
And also, Ange, the order applies to all our staff within the union.
Yep.
And the same as it applies to us, because we've been authorised workers throughout COVID, being able to attend the workplace and do what we need to do. So it does apply to us as well. So we're not saying, we're under the same conditions as everyone else.
Okay. Thanks, Paul. So if there's no other questions, then we'll leave it there. But please let us know if there are any issues coming up about this, so that if we need to do any support people or provide any assistance or get on to employers who are behaving badly, we want to know that so that we can help people as much as possible to be able to meet this deadline and keep doing the amazing work that you do. Okay. Anything else there, James, that's come through before I finish?
I haven't had any more. We've had some people saying thanks, but I haven't had any more. Oh, and can the, oh, hang on, now it's all flying through. Whoa. Just questions about, can the the links be emailed out, some of those links that Rasheen is putting into the Rasheen's put into the thing there, and there are some comments coming through about why aren't we fighting this? Why aren't we challenging the government around this these orders? So I think we've outlined that.
I think we've covered that. We actually have no capacity to. There is no way for us to do that.
There's no illegal or industrial way to change this. It's an order. It's not the government that's doing it. It's the Chief Health Officer under his powers. The government's the same. All the politicians have to be vaccinated if they want to attend the work site. It's all people that are authorised workers, and that's the decision being made based on the safety that they believe for all Victorians and the best way to move forward out of lockdown and COVID. So, yes, it's not great for people, but at the end of the day, we have no choice, and it's about making the best of those choices and moving forward. So I think we'll leave it there, and thanks to everyone. Keep in touch, and we want to keep supporting our members. We'll always support your industrial rights, and thank you for your time, and keep up the hard work and look after yourselves. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. I'll finish them.